tell us. There you go.
Cool.
So,
Yeah, so how did I end up at Stamps? Um, I mean, I had been interested in art like in high school. I was not a very great high school student, but I was very passionate and motivated about art. I took on kind of like extracurricular activity things around graphic design, making flyers, making posters, making things. Um, I kind of thought painting was going to be my focus. And so like that's what I was, interested in. I'll go to art school, I'll develop in that way. Um, and I mean, I applied to, I basically had to go to one of the state schools in Michigan. And I think I was extremely lucky to have gotten into U of M. I think that was like not very good odds that had happened. But I got lucky, and I mean, I had toured the school in advance. I was excited about it. I didn't know a lot about the curriculum and kind of what I was getting into, but I knew it was Michigan. The school seemed exciting. It seemed full of motivated people. There's just a good energy to it. So that brought me there.
yeah, I love that. I think I've heard that sort of observation that people are surprised that they get into U of M without realizing there are 19 separate schools and colleges at U of M. U of M doesn't accept you, the individual school does. And
Yeah.
obviously the Stamps school loved, your application and your work. And so while, yeah, Stamps is in U of M, technically U of M didn't accept you, we did.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Yes, I do appreciate that differentiation. And I mean, I'm very glad that schools are able to do their separate admissions in that way.
Oh
I know
yeah.
that's not possible.
Yeah, but we were very happy to have you at the time. Were you at Stamps all 4 years?
Mm-hmm.
And what year did you graduate?
Yeah, so I was there from the fall of 2003 until 2007.
Very good. And as you look back, um, what do you remember most fondly about the time that you spent at Stamps and U of M?
Um, I mean, I remember just the types of creative challenges coming in. I guess the two most fun things I'll call that, like coming in freshman year and just being given these creative challenges of like some of the TMP classes we had back then that were just like these very conceptually oriented classes. They didn't concern themselves much with a particular medium, with technical skill. Like that wasn't the focus. And like that was exciting to me. I'd never really been challenged that way in the types of classes we had in high school. The push to do like just creative classes across mediums, and so like being forced to take metal shop class and fibers, like again things I would have considered once that I would like do in art school, and just like kind of the thrill of that, of like learning from like really experienced people how to weld and how to do those things.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then I mean the other just like standout memory is kind of the senior year the IP projects, and just the sort of like focused creative drive of that.
What
Really
did you
special time.
create for IP?
I did I think it was about a 7-minute 3D animated video. And it was like this single take, and it kind of went through a lot of different like sort of political themes. And it was this kind of like very ethereal, just like drifty video with all these little like 3D vignettes that it went through. And it played at the Michigan Theater, and that was a really like exciting experience having that film there.
Yeah, yeah.
So it was like a big, go ahead, sorry.
No, go ahead.
It was a big project. I had done it in Maya and After Effects, and like those weren't things I had a lot of experience with, but I'd been able to learn some Maya with Alona Van Gent, and sort of just cobbled together the rest, and it was like a big exploratory piece.
Yeah, Alona actually just retired. She, in my opinion, is just an amazing, creative, wonderful human being. So the curriculum has been modified since you were with us. Instead of 2 years of foundation, students now have 1 year of foundation. And I think that observation about concept over skill is very prevalent a lot of the time in the foundation year, we don't look at the work that students are creating as like, oh, this is portfolio worthy. We're much more concerned again with concept,
Hmm.
with being challenged. Um, CFC, if you recall, concept, form, and context, has been boiled down to a pretty amazing course, methods of inquiry. Um, and so students are still being challenged to think differently. Sophomores are being challenged to think through their second year studio. So we took those ideas of CFC,
Hmm.
TMP, and kind of disperse them into some other direction. So that part of what you were doing, I don't think has changed, and hopefully students are feeling challenged.
Hmm.
The next thing I'd love to know, and I don't know if you've ever had one of those sort of full circle aha type moments when, in your career, you think to yourself, oh, that's why they made me take that course.
Um, Gosh, I don't know if I have a specific one. Um, I think the thing that I've seen repeatedly through my career is the need to sort of frame problems like, you know, to really take like a higher level approach to problems, and like to not just look at it as like, here's the assignment, here's the thing I'm going to do, but like, what are they asking for? What's the creative space involved? What types of solutions might work for this thing? And like not take it on in sort of so much of a technical way, but take it on as more of like a big creative challenge way. And even in the works that I do professionally, like in the game space, like that's often been a beneficial way to approach things, is to, yeah, I don't know, think about more like of what the end goals are, like more so than like a tight creative, like a tight problem.
Yeah, I love that. Again, that whole idea of concept and challenge, of thinking beyond the surface of something. I can definitely see the connection, to think that way outside of stamps through your career. That's amazing. I love that. Um, did you have any internships while you were a student?
So while I was a student, I worked in the University Union's graphic design office. That was probably the
Lisa,
most notable one. Yeah, with Lisa Bartlett,
yeah,
her name. And that was a great opportunity. I mean, to just be sort of a functioning graphic designer, and it was all these. We would make like posters for student organizations and university union events, and like they'd be big posters that would get printed out, or we'd make like pamphlets for different groups. It was cool. I mean, I've never really been a part of since then that kind of like print media, like graphic design type role. Like I've always thought it'd be fun to get back to it. Um, but it was just great in terms of like getting a sense for what it was like to juggle the work of a bunch of clients and keep up with things and push projects through to completion and deliver them and see them printed and like know that it was done in the world. Like it was a cool experience.
yeah, yeah. I'm wondering, in addition to an internship like that, did you have other sort of experiential learning opportunities, like with student organizations or anything that was more outside the classroom where you got to apply what you were learning?
Um, let's I mean, I did various kind of freelance things, if that's what you mean. I mean, I made some websites for both some local professionals. I did like a photographer's website. I did Arts on the Hills website. I made posters for a concert series at the Hill Auditorium. So like just various kind of graphic design things. Anytime I could figure out an opportunity. I did like a website for a law school project. I was like pretty, if I would find out about an opportunity to do something graphic designy or web designy, like I would go for it.
Yeah, yeah. I think, obviously I want students to do as much outside the classroom as they can. So I love hearing
Yeah.
you talk about that. Um, so going back to IP for a minute, um, tell me a bit more about your senior year. What was that last year like for you?
Um, I mean, initially it's very scary. Like, I don't know what a project is, and I don't know if I'm capable of formulating such a big project, but then you kind of just step by step your way through it until like something emerges and like, hey, that was amazing. I certainly couldn't have like sat down and foreseen that ever. Just kind of a testament to like working your way through step by step something that just seemed so daunting at the front. Um, I guess the part that stands out to me the most is just the last few months when it's like, oh my God, like I'm behind and there's so much work to do. And, just working very hard and very persistently to like, this has to get done. And,
Yeah.
like it just not having the technical skills in some ways that I needed to do it, but just powering through and like making it happen and having a video file to turn in at the end was like, that was a real journey and kind of took some adrenaline and some late nights and everything, but yeah, it was fun. I mean, it's
Yeah.
so fun.
When you were in your final semester, much were you really thinking about the job search and getting a job?
Not much. And I mean, the IP project also, like, I really had very little understanding of what I wanted to go do.
Uh,
I mean, I figured it'd be maybe something graphic designy, maybe something computer animation-y. But like, I didn't have a plan. Um, and like, I was just having fun. I was making a cool thing, and I'd figure the next thing out when I got there. I'm definitely not like a person who's ever had like a long-term plan, which probably is not the best thing, but it's worked. Um, yeah.
I have two observations on that. The first one is, yes, this is the Travis I remember. um, and the second one is, I love that. Um, Obviously, this approach doesn't work for everybody, but your sort of relaxed attitude about I'll figure it out,
Yeah.
I think can sometimes be very useful for people who do get very stressed. So I love having that sort of other, hey, it's okay.
Yeah.
Figure it out. What was your first job after you graduated?
Yeah, so I did a brief internship at Car and Driver magazine. That was right around, like right after I graduated. That was just an internship for a few months. That was a strange one. Not, it was a great experience. It just was again not something I ever like. I was like, what am I doing here? I don't know anything about cars, and everyone else does. Um, yeah, so I did that for a few months, and then so you and I were talking earlier about sort of the unexpected ways careers happen. Um, so very brief story. I was driving late at night from Ann Arbor to Kalamazoo, where my parents lived, to go visit them. And I stopped at a gas station and I saw a guy there. And I said, hey, I think I recognize you. You were in the art school like 2 years ahead of me. And your name is Max. And I had kind of like met him a long time ago, but I didn't really know anything about him. And he said, yes, I am indeed. I work in Chicago at Midway Games doing game design UI now. And like, is that the kind of thing you're interested in? And I said, I guess, yeah. And he said, well, I'll tell you what, send me your portfolio and I'll like look at it if you have one. And I don't think I had one yet, but I put it together. Um, and so I did that. Like, and he sent me back this like, he like took screenshots of every page on my portfolio and like redlined over them with like basically all the areas that he thought I should improve before actually applying.
Yeah.
And I was blown away that he had like taken the time to do that. And it was like just the most like direct like feedback pretty much that it was very like a lot of really explicit and clear and like just helpful feedback. So I did all that and I sent it back to him and he said, all right, I'll share this with my boss and see if we can get you in for an interview. And so I went out and did that. And that's how I got my sort of first job and start in the game space, which was like really, that had never been on my radar as a potential career path.
Yeah. Was Dominic Cianciolo at Midway at that time or no?
I don't think so.
Yeah, okay. So you might not have overlapped.
Yeah.
So let's talk about the idea of UI and
Yeah.
games. For people who are not familiar with that role, can you tell us more about that?
Yeah, I mean, so sort of presently speaking, I'll answer that in more of a present tense because I think the roles evolved a bit over the 15 years.
Sure. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, so what I do now, I would describe as being in the UI and UX space. There's a lot of different ways to describe that, but generally in games, um, those are disciplines that work alongside game designers to deliver those game designs to players. And so game designers will have an idea around here's a mode we're going to put in a game. It's going to work in these ways, and there's going to be all these features to it. And typically they're very convoluted and confusing and maybe have a lot of ins and outs around sort of how your success is tracked and, like how you make progress and how you do things. And so like over the last couple decades in the games industry, there has evolved this role of user interface design and user experience design, which are all about taking those ideas and honing in on them and figuring out how to present them. And so there's a lot of aspects of graphic design, layout, typography, to it, user flow, just kind of like interactive software flow. And then there's also just kind of pure visual presentation type stuff of, if you're at the beginning of a project, figuring out what the visual style is going to be and doing all the development work for that. If you're later in a project, just, kind of figuring out how to follow the visual conventions of the game, how to, push the boundaries, how to make it cool. But so it kind of includes both sides of that in terms of like the initial just creating like gray box wireframes of, how do we take these ideas that a game designer or type person has and turn them into something. And a lot of times that's a very collaborative process. And so there's a lot of back and forth around like, hey, this aspect is just confusing. Like players aren't going to get it. We got to change the game design. So we take it on in a very collaborative way, going back and forth, and then kind of on that side working with game designers, and then on the other side working with your like engineer, computer programmer types in terms of actually getting those things into the game and delivered.
Yeah, very collaborative.
Mm-hmm.
So with Midway, what was the first kind of project or projects that you were working on?
Yeah. The first project I ever worked on there, they asked me to do logos, and it was for they had a game called NFL Blitz, which was a big hit. And then they lost the NFL license, but they decided to try to continue making a football game, but with like fictitious teams. And so we had to make a bunch of fictitious football logos. And I was never a great logo designer, and it was hard. And I didn't do a great job on it. And like a month in, I was like pretty panicked that like I was not up for the job. And yeah, like I still am not a great logo designer. After that, they gave me some screens to work on. Like they gave me the menu screen of the game, like not glamorous screens, but like something that wasn't a logo. And like the screen that had a diagram showing you how the controls worked, and the loading screen. And those I was like determined that I was not going to fail again at those. So I did like a million iterations on those until I got somewhere that I was happy with. And that went a lot better. I remember the review, and they shared it. And the executive producer on the project was like, "Who made these?" And they were like, "Travis made those." And he just had like a little pause there. And I knew that I hadn't totally failed my second task.
So how long did you stay with Midway?
So I was there about a little over a year and a half. And I would have gladly stayed longer. It was a cool job. We got to work on these like neat console games that were coming out for the PlayStation and Xbox. That company had been around since the late 50s. They'd been a pinball manufacturer and arcade game. They made a lot of classic arcade and pinball games. But they were not in a great shape when I joined, and it got worse and worse, just financially speaking. And so in 2009, they went bankrupt, and they did, big layoffs. We saw it coming for a long time. It was like kind of a dark period to be there. That was my first experience with the kind of like tech industry, gaming industry, like volatility. But so I left when I when I was laid off at that point. I mean, the whole company was essentially laid off.
Yeah.
They went.
What came next?
So after that, I mean, I was in Chicago, without a job. And at that time, there were fewer gaming opportunities than there are now. Yeah, I think the space has gotten a lot better. But so I was just applying to stuff and I didn't have a lot of good leads. And I ended up finding a job at a creative agency that did website work. They did it mostly for like movie clients, like movie websites. And when I joined, they had just started doing websites for Lego as well. And so they were making these kind of like interactive websites for Lego where they'd put like 3D videos and stuff in. It was this very small, scrappy operation. It like they wanted me to start like a day after I interviewed, which should have been a red flag retrospectively. Yeah, but I mean, it was cool. And so we made these websites. On one day, they're like, "Hey, does anyone know Maya? Like to make like these 3D animations?" And I'm like, "Well, I kind of do." Like I made a senior project on my own, figuring it out. I can do this some more. And so for like a little over a year there, I did a lot of like 3D animation of Lego figures telling stories, which is again like I really would have benefited from like a mentor there. I was kind of the resident Maya authority, and I was not in a position to be the Maya authority. But it was still a cool opportunity.
Yeah, yeah. Um, so you stayed there, you said for like about a year,
Yeah.
and then what happened?
So I was like that job, like I wasn't going anywhere. I didn't have any mentorship. It wasn't even really like I kind of wanted to work in games again, and I knew that. Um, and I had a girlfriend at the time who had moved out to California to go to UC Davis. And I thought I'm just gonna get out of Chicago, and I've been here three and some years at this point, and go move to California and see what I can figure out. So at that point, I moved to the San Francisco area, without a plan, without a job. Um, and I'd saved up enough money that I could do that, and kind of knew that I had, I probably could have scraped by for a year before like it all fell apart. Um, and so, yeah, I mean, I just applied at places, and one of the ones I applied at was the company Zynga, which I had never heard of. It was kind of a new thing. They were doing Facebook gaming, kind of at this like Facebook gaming was this exploding thing at that point. It was Flash based games on Facebook that had these like major virality components where like people would spam each other with like Travis needs your help in Farmville, like water his crops, like these kinds of really obnoxious things that like Facebook eventually like put the the lid on, to Zynga's detriment. But so yeah, I got a job at Zynga, doing doing Facebook gaming. And so that was, it was very different. These are like games that take place in a browser. They were very socially oriented. Rather than selling for $60 for a console game, it was all about microtransactions, being able to, have people come play every day and spend $1 or $5 or $100 at a time, and sort of make these like sort of habitual like engagements with the game. So that kind of put me on the career track that I've been for the last 10 or 12 years.
So Zynga evolved way beyond, the stuff they were doing for Facebook. Were you part of that progression into this like phenomenal like movie graphics that they would ultimately start to use with some of their games?
So, I mean, I think that's a generous assessment of Zynga's quality. Well,
I played some of their believe it or not, some of their slot games
oh yeah,
where they literally have like the visuals from Game of Thrones
oh yeah, okay, yeah,
in the game.
yeah. I mean, so I joined in 2010, and Zynga was, I guess, pretty scrappy at the time. They were cranking out these Facebook games, and they were like a bit of a dubious quality sometimes, but they'd sort of had this formula that would work. And I think while I was there, the company matured a lot. And so, they went from this like tiny funding startup that was just like trying to make, to get established into like an actual fairly large company that had the budget to make higher quality products. Yeah, I mean, I'm like thinking about that phase of Zynga, like that was, I will say, a pretty wild time. Zynga, like that was 2010, 2011, 2012, and like there was this big rush. There was this like a lot of money in the space. I don't know if you've ever seen the show Silicon Valley. It had a bit of that vibe,
Yeah.
in terms of like free lunch, free dinner, free breakfast, and fully featured happy hour every Friday, like company trips to Hawaii. And it was like that was a time when the money was like certainly flowing in the industry, and they were just like, what new perks can we dream up? Um, and I think we see the contraction of that a bit now, but it was kind of wild to be a part of like what I think was about the most reckless version of like just financial irresponsibility. Uh,
Why do you think the Silicon Valley companies of that time were operating in that way?
I think they just had a ton of money, and there was this real competition for talent, like especially, I mean, not on UI and UX have always been in significant demand in that industry since I've been a part of it. Um, but like, I mean, particularly in like getting engineers has been like, they compete with the Googles and Apples and everybody. And like there's it, I think companies in the Bay Area found it really hard to find the candidates they needed, but they had the money. And so kind of like lavishing on those employee perks was a way to do it.
Yeah. No, was EA Sports next for you?
So the thing I did after that, I worked at Zynga for a few years. I worked on a bunch of those Facebook games, a few of which were pretty big. I mean, made a ton of money and had millions of players. So eventually I had just had enough of that. And going back to Max Jaxa, who had gotten me into Midway.
Yeah.
At that point, he and I had been talking. He was in Chicago still, I was in San Francisco, but we'd been talking about kind of going into a collaborative arrangement as contractors and starting a little creative studio. So that was the thing that came next for us. Was I spent about 3 years as a contractor, working with Max. We had a little company called Dagger Brothers, and we had a bunch of gaming clients, startup clients outside of the gaming space, working on apps, doing videos for people. And so we would kind of bring in clients together, share them between ourselves. We had an illustrator or two who we would hire for help on stuff. And so for about 3 years, I did that.
Yeah. And were you primarily still sort of in that UI UX space in that partnership?
Yeah, all the gaming work we did was that, and we did like some apps for there were some like robots that kids could program, and we worked on those apps. And I mean, I would still describe that as in the UI UX space. It was figuring out how to somebody had an idea at this company of an app where you could do programming of some sort visually for kids, and we would figure out kind of what the interface looked like and how it would functionally get explained, and what the screens were and what the flows were and all that. Other projects, it would be a video game, and they'd have this idea for some robot video game of robots fighting each other or something, and then we would it would be much more of a visual type thing of like coming up with a styling and looking at other games in the market and sort of making pitches of like mood boards and like mock-ups of potential screens and developing. So we would do both those types of things, but it was all still essentially, I think we saw ourselves as a UI and UX boutique primarily.
Yeah. So you said you did that for about 3 years. And then what happened?
Well, then I had a little so I did that for 3.5 years, or yeah, I guess about three. And one of the clients that I had taken on was Zynga again. And I actually ended up going back there. They couldn't renew our contract anymore due to California laws about contractors. And it was a project I was really invested in at that point. I'd been working on it for a while, and I just wasn't willing to be done with it. So I went to work on that, and I spent another year and a half or so at Zynga working on that project until that project was canceled. they put me on the Zynga poker game, and that was just kind of a slow-paced environment that I hadn't signed up for. So I left. So I had a few stints with them.
And then what?
So I left Zynga. I had a couple people I knew from Zynga had gone to EA. They were starting a team. The team was to create like a Star Wars mobile game. It was going to be a Star Wars kind of real-time strategy game in the mobile space. It was kind of an interesting pitch. I was going to be the third employee on that. So I went and did that. That took me to the EA mobile division. And I worked on that project for a couple of years, including as the creative director. So in that role, I had more broad responsibilities. So I was really overseeing kind of what the game design was shaping up to be, what the art direction was shaping up to be. So I worked on that for about 2 years, a year and a half. Again, the games industry is volatile. Like projects come and go, things get canceled, things get launched and then canceled. Like there's a lot of a quest for hits, and like hits are few and far between. And so in that case, there was actually like this big leadership shakeup at EA, and kind of the pet projects of the previous people got canceled, and we were still kind of, I think we had a very compelling game, but this we were not dysfunctional. It was a good game, but it wasn't something that they wanted to bet on going forward as the new management came in, so that got canceled. I spent another year at EA working on a Lord of the Rings game. It was another mobile game, and yeah, I mean, we're getting closer to the present here. So yeah, I mean, it was not a project I had really signed up to work on. Again, like I joined these companies for projects that I feel excited about, and then I get put on these other ones when they get canceled. Has been a theme. So that happened. I worked on it for about a year. It was interesting, but it was not the healthiest team dynamic. It just wasn't a team I wanted to be on. It was a tense environment, a very stressful, high pressure, high intensity, that I didn't enjoy, and it was getting to.
Where was the pressure coming from?
The project that I worked on, there was this idea that we were gonna go from kind of the very beginning of development to the end in like 18 months, and that we would do that by sort of operating on a formula that the company knew already, which makes sense and sounds good. Like a lot of games kind of languish for 3 years or more even before they are able to come out. The flip side of that is it's like every day it's like, what did we do today? What did we do today? And the check-ins tend to be a bit more it's just a different kind of environment. It's what resulted from that kind of idea that we had such an aggressive schedule to go from nothing to a game that we could do a launch with, a soft launch with.
Yeah, I'm hearing you talk about the gaming industry, I think in a really interesting way, in that you recognize the volatility, you recognize you can put a huge amount of thought and creativity into something that may end up not going anywhere. And yet, somehow, you seem to still be very enamored of that particular sector. Is that correct? Is that a right observation?
Yeah, I mean, it's true. Like the work we do on a day-to-day basis, it's fun, it's creative, it's challenging. The problems we solve are like they continue to be interesting. I mean, it's been a disappointment how many years has it been right now since I worked on a game that like had a true global launch? Like some of the stuff I've worked on had small launches and kind of test launches, but it like longer than I would like. And so that's the rough side. That was one of the perks of working as a contractor and working as a freelancer, is that I wasn't as like attached to a single project, and so I was able to sort of be a part of more things that were that came to the world. On the same time, like as a contractor, you never really have that experience of being a part of the team and having as much invested in like, can we ship this and will players love it? So I mean, at the same time, like games is a creative space that I just like, and I kind of have I think I kind of skipped over this part, but like when I was after Midway Games and I was looking at these creative agencies to work in, and I kept finding like so many of them were like selling stuff, and I like they were selling stuff I didn't want to sell. And I turned down like multiple jobs, and then I felt like, oh, nobody wants to talk to me anymore. Um, and that kind of like led me back to games. It's like, well, I can make games. Like, you know, like just from a what it's not like an intrinsic good, but it's also like at least I'm not selling McDonald's and cigarettes or something.
Yeah, yeah.
Uh,
I think that's a great observation in terms of, trajectory and being authentic, and true to um, what makes you you. Um,
mhm.
let's jump back forward again. So you were with EA, a project comes along that was less than satisfactory.
Yeah.
What did you do? What came next?
So yeah, I mean, after I stuck it out in that project and made an effort, but the sort of like stress to benefit ratio was not working out. And so there came a point when I left that job. And again, just kind of reached out into my network, emailed a bunch of people who I had worked with, said, who's got something fun happening? Um, and heard from some people at the company that I'm with now, which is called Scopely. And so, yeah, I mean, I interviewed there and seemed fun. It's a LA based studio, so I'm fully remote right now, which has its pros and cons. But I joined that. This was one. Here's just another example of that volatility. So I joined to work on a Avatar themed game, like the movie that came out, and I joined in December of 20, like a year and a half ago, a little over a year ago, 2011, 2021. And about a month after I joined, they canceled that game. And like that was with the holidays in the middle. So it was like I worked on that game for a total of about 2.5 weeks.
Oh my God.
I was the last person who they'd been working on it for like 6 years. And I knew that when I went in that it was like this project is a mess. And I was like, all right, we're gonna get it done. I was excited to be a part of like righting the ship there. But very shortly after I joined, like within a couple weeks, Scopely decided like we've been investing in this game for 6 years. It's not going anywhere. There were contractual obligations that it had to be out before the movie came out, and that was like just increasingly looking like a dead end. So they canceled it. Um, and so at that point, I was put onto once again reassigned, put onto a Marvel game. So the game I work on now is called Marvel Strike Force, and my role there is as a UI and UX director. So I work with a team of about 8 UI and UX designers, kind of directing their work, doing reviews, giving feedback, giving direction, getting it into the game. And that's a game that's been live for about 5 years, and continues to be a successful game. So every 6 weeks, we update the game. We add new characters to it. We also add new features, new game modes, new so it even though it's been out for quite a while, it's still got quite a large team. Every month, sort of working to keep it engaging and fresh and interesting, and like, I mean, the problems that we face and sort of the creative solutions we have to have are, I go back and forth. There's a part of me that wants to get back to like a fresh project in development that could be anything, and like the sky's the limit. But it's certainly an interesting space to work on something that is played by hundreds of thousands of people every month, and they tell us if they like or don't like the things that we did. And I go on Reddit and I read what they have to say, and like wish that I could respond to them, but never do. So that's the role that I'm in now.
But on the other hand, as a user experience designer, that's kind of part of your job is to know what the users are saying.
Absolutely. I think I kind of glossed over that before, actually. I mean, another significant part of our role, we work with a research team, and are very involved in kind of figuring out what players want, what's working for them, what isn't. When we have new features coming in, we play test those features with them. We watch them play. We capture videos, and mean, we do all sorts of kind of like just understanding who are these people and why. And I mean, on some games like this one, I can understand it pretty well. I think I'm close enough to our demographic. On others, like some of the Zynga games, like I wasn't. And you really have to like just watch and learn and kind of understand like who's playing Zynga poker, because it's not me. And
Yeah,
it's a pretty interesting experience.
yeah. I want to expand a little bit on just how collaborative all of this has to be. What are some of the roles? I mean, obviously software and concept art, etc. But so what are some of the roles that go into the gaming world that maybe people don't expect?
So let's see. I mean, on my team, there's an art team, and that's going to have 3D artists, animators, riggers, um, concept artists who do kind of upfront work, like you said, art producers who do, just scheduling things. So there's an art team. There's going to be engineers, graphics engineers, server engineers, client engineers. There's a large QA department, people who play test our game and just bang on it and do weird things and then tell us when it breaks. Um, um, there's there's a very small sound team who does the sound for all of our stuff. We've got the UI and UX group who, I mean, that's close to 10 people by itself. I'm probably forgetting something. I feel like I am, but yeah, I mean, it's a pretty, and the game design discipline, and that kind of spans people who are more on the, like in our game, it's a character-based game. And so there are people, game designers, who are purely functioning around tuning the characters and making it a functioning game. But then there's other people who are,
how much motion capture goes into what's being created?
on some of the games I've worked on a lot. We had special suits and things. On this one, I'm not actually sure. I don't have great visibility into kind of how the animation team is doing their stuff. The animation quality in this game is very good.
Yeah.
But I don't really know actually how much they like hand key versus how much they do that way. I just realized I had one major oversight in my job's overview.
Sure.
The other big section is sort of the business side. And so that's one of the big innovations that kind of came with Zynga. And like, if you think about the traditional console industry versus like where sort of mobile gaming or Facebook gaming was then, is this like increased focus on like running these games like a business as things that are just out there and run week over week. And so we have quite large teams dedicated to just sort of what those sales are, what we're selling in the game, how much it costs, how it gets surfaced, and just kind of looking at the sort of financial track of the game, which is very different than the sort of typical console model that was all about just pay $60 and you get the thing.
Yeah, I'm wondering for the students who are with us now and who may see this later, what advice would you give them for, kind of getting your foot in the door in the gaming space?
I mean, I think the key to finding an intro type role, and I know that there are internships around. I mean, I've had interns before. The thing that we would be looking for in those situations would be relevant student work in a portfolio and kind of just something demonstrating an interest. And so, whether they'd taken on, whether they had actual school projects that were around designing software or apps or interfaces, or whether they'd kind of just taken on their own projects of like redesigning screens from a game or thinking up their own flows for like how something could be improved. But for our interns, it was really like just about looking for work, looking for portfolios, looking for sort of the type of problem solving that we needed to handle these like large information sets and figure out ways to distill them onto screens and create flows and like surface them in a way that players can potentially understand. So
yeah, I also think of the gaming space in some ways that I think about filmmaking with storyboards and that type of thing.
mm-hmm.
Is that also your sense that there's sort of an overlap now between, creating games and creating film.
I mean, certainly in games, like as the production qualities have gone up and the sort of like just like you have more like animated sequences where characters are doing things and interface elements are appearing, like that can be a thing more. And so like needing to think through those sequences and storyboard it out and probably including animation bits and like interactive components as a part of that, like that part certainly resonates with me. I don't really have much insight on the film side itself, like how that might impact the film industry. I know they're using more gaming tools, but I think that's kind of a separate thing from anything I'm involved with.
And they're making films now based on
Yeah.
computer games.
Yeah. And they're making them like in gaming engines because the gaming engine rendering quality is so good. But
Well, and then the HBO series The Last of Us,
mm-hmm.
based on a computer game from like 2013, which is fascinating. Um,
Yes.
so anyway, it's been absolutely incredible to have you with us. If students wanted to be in touch with you, what is the best way to do that? What do you prefer?
Um, Probably the best way is just to, I mean, you can message me on LinkedIn. I will respond. I get spam, that I like hope to see through. So that'd be an easy way to get in touch. And I mean, I'm certainly happy to, if anyone wants advice or portfolios looked at or anything else,
Yeah,
you know,
that's
yeah.
great. Thank you so much for that. Obviously, I'm connected to Travis on LinkedIn, so if you need any help connecting, please let me know. Um, Now, if any of the students who are on with us right now, if any of you have questions, feel free to turn off your camera and ask, or if you're more comfortable, dropping a question into the chat, that's great too. I see Rina has just showed us her beautiful face. So do you have a question?
Yeah, so I have a question about like the UI UX type stuff because I'm interested in going into design or like the game design sort of field. And like right now I do a lot of like graphic design, UI UX type work,
Mm-hmm.
but I don't know how I can sort of and I took like a Blender class once, and I'm like I'm not sure how I can like step into like working on games, but since you're saying that it's UI UX, I wonder what sort of things translate over from like just doing like web interface like UI UX type stuff. Like like how much of that, or if any of it, like does it translate to like working with games, or like, and is it like, and is it also like only for types of games that have like interfaces that are more similar to like web design?
Um, I think there's a lot of like applicability there in terms of, and I've pushed for this at various points that like as we're recruiting candidates, especially sort of like lower, like more junior level candidates, that like we should be looking at web designers as well because they have a lot of the right sensibilities. And so yeah, I mean, I think sort of having a strong portfolio that just shows like web design is still just interactive software, and so presenting things in compelling ways that a user can click on and scroll through and whatever, like to me that it's a very, very similar problem space. I mean, if you're like really interested in the gaming space, like I feel like figuring out some projects, at a student level that you'd be interested in working on, is a good thing to add to a portfolio. But for sure, like, I
As
mean,
in like
that's what,
making a full game?
well, I mean, that's like a daunting task, but more of like, are there either, I don't know, like, are there student projects in games that you could contribute to? Or are there just, like games out there where you'd want to like, you see a lot of this stuff on like Dribble and stuff where people like redesign screens from games or have proposals for how it could be improved. So like those are the types of projects you can take on that are more gaming specific. But I think like finding web work is certainly a good way to get a feel for the space.
Yeah, and Rina, you're familiar with Dribble, right? And know how to find Dribble? If not, I'm going to drop it in the chat for you, okay?
Sorry, that's just a portfolio. That's a site where people post creative work. And so it's the kind of creative work you'll find on the site is, I think there's 3Bs.
3Bs. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, I left off a B, sorry.
Yeah.
See, my fingers went too
I
fast.
have like another question if that's okay.
Yeah, go for it.
So like right now in my portfolio, I've been working on like a pitch for a video game that like we've developed like a concept for, and then I did a bunch of the concept art for it. And then like so I have a bunch of concept art for that in my portfolio, but then separately I have like some graphic design type stuff. What's like what kind of I don't know like what I need in my portfolio to sort of get noticed by
Hmm.
gaming companies.
Yeah, I mean, it certainly depends what type of role. Like if maybe you're describing more of a UI, like art role, where like those types of roles will be about, applying visuals to screens. They'll also just be about creating icons and things. So, I mean, like for some of those roles, it's like, can you show a set of consistent visual, there's so many different things we could be talking about, but like from a UI art perspective, like
Mhm.
just compelling visuals of screens in a game, sets of icons, like those are just nice things to see. Like someone could sit down and kind of like do the production work involved in creating like a consistent set of high quality, icons or like things that you would like, get in a game. I mean, there's a whole different side of this, which is more of like the game concept art side, and I
Right.
haven't really touched on that at all. I've worked with people in that field a lot, but that's kind of a different thing in terms of what they'd be looking for, just in terms of like raw illustration power and creative explorations. But yeah.
Yeah, Sam, did you have a question for Travis?
Thank you.
Thank you very
You answered it a little bit, but I was wondering, like which platforms are most often used in like your space to like network and or find either freelancers or like new people. I've just heard like conflicting sources of like either ArtStation or like Dribble or LinkedIn, the effectiveness of all three of those spaces.
On the concept art side, it's going to be a lot more of like your art station. And so like that's the kind of thing you see all the time when you're looking at concept art candidates or art directors. For UI and UX, like a lot of it, I feel like I don't have a great answer here. I mean, it's usually LinkedIn things that I'm reviewing. In terms of how we find candidates, like a lot of the time that will be going through LinkedIn. And looking for people's experience. Hopefully they've got a portfolio linked from their from their from their profile on LinkedIn, and then trying to look at a portfolio and look at what their actual work looks like. Ultimately it comes down to wanting to see a portfolio of work that shows relevant skills.
Travis, have you looked at Gamma Sutra before?
Yeah, that's a news site, right?
Relatively, but they have job postings, and I'm wondering, because I think what Sam is also getting to is there are some sites that specialize more by niche.
Yeah. I don't have a good answer. Is that
Yeah.
I like we have job postings. I don't know where they go. I know it's hard to get candidates, and maybe I should ask those questions more of like, hey, where are you guys posting? Like that. I don't know.
On my way, just
Yeah.
I'll post. Yeah. Other questions before we run out of time with Travis? Oh, you're welcome, Sam. Great to see you. Okay, so Jihan, I'm a sophomore and I'm interested in scene design. And do you think I need to investigate more in other areas like character design for the portfolio, or should I focus on only one direction?
I mean, typically roles in most game studios are going to be somewhat specialized in terms of having character artists or environment artists or concept artists. And so like a role will, in most companies, and most like larger companies especially, will be specialized in some way. Like, I came out of Michigan, which was like, I came like one of the things I appreciated about the stamp school was like being pushed in so many different directions and to focus more on like just strong creative development more so than specialization. And some schools are much more focused on like early specialization. And so like I'm not going to encourage anyone to like over specialize earlier than they have to. I think, you know, if you have a portfolio that just shows a high quality of illustration work that includes both character work and environment work, like, and you're looking for a junior level job or an internship, like you're probably in a good position, and you don't need to have like shown that you picked one and have committed for life to that thing. Would be my take on that.
Yeah, I'm also curious to follow up. Thank you so much for the question. I would think that demonstrating an understanding in one sort of niche, even though you want to be in a different one, would demonstrate your curiosity, demonstrate that you're interested in the whole, not just the parts. Is that valued in the industry?
I think so. Yeah. Yeah, I would agree with that.
Good, good. All right. John, great to have you here tonight. It is 7 o'clock. I value all of your time. If any of you have questions for Travis that you didn't get to or we didn't get to, please feel free to be in touch with me and I can send them on to Travis and help you connect with him. Travis, thank you so much.
Thank you. It's great talking to you.
Amazing to have you with us. This is obviously recorded as I stop the recording.